The traditional tennis media relies on a predictable annual narrative as the professional tour makes its exhausting transition from lightning-fast hard courts to the grueling red clay of Europe. This establishment wants fans to believe the surface acts as a massive equalizer where explosive young prodigies are humbled and systematically dismantled by gritty veterans who have spent lifetimes grinding on the dirt. However, every once in a generation, a unique athlete arrives who does not simply adapt to these punishing conditions. Instead, they actively weaponize the surface, completely shattering the archaic expectations held by the old guard and violently seizing control of the global hierarchy. Welcome back to CRT Pro, the internet's premier destination for the unfiltered truth behind the business, psychology, and biomechanics of the WTA Tour. Today, we are documenting a significant paradigm shift rather than a standard preview. We are covering the historic 35th anniversary of the Upper Austria Ladies Linz, which marks a major transition as the tournament moves to indoor clay for the first time. The focus is on the explosive opening round showdown between 20-year-old Filipina sensation Alexandra Eala and 29-year-old Austrian veteran Julia Grabher. Eala enters this clay season following a remarkable rise to world number 46, while Grabher looks to defend her home turf at the Design Center Linz. This match represents a clash of generations and styles, as the young superstar attempts to weaponize the red clay against a seasoned veteran intimately familiar with the European dirt. It is a highly calculated encounter that could redefine the hierarchy of the tour as these two athletes battle for a spot in the round of 16 to celebrate this landmark anniversary. Tournament organizers made a drastic move by removing their traditional indoor hard courts and hauling 100 tons of crushed red clay into the city's design center to build a specialized 30,000-seat gladiator arena. Stepping onto this freshly laid dirt is Alexandra Eala, an athlete seemingly engineered to dominate the surface. We will break down her terrifying tactical advantages, the hostile psychological warfare of the Austrian crowd, and why Julia Grabher may become the first casualty of Eala's impending European conquest. Subscribe and turn on notifications as we dissect this tactical masterclass. To comprehend the magnitude of the execution expected in Austria, one must analyze the intimidating momentum Eala carries into this WTA 500 event. While the traditional narrative suggests young prodigies struggle with week-to-week consistency and implode under professional pressure, Eala has violently shattered that story over recent months. Her rise demonstrates a level of stability and focus that defies the typical trajectory of highly touted prospects, proving she is prepared to maintain her dominance regardless of the surface or the stage. That we are highlighting a player who aggressively marched into the Miami Open, one of the most grueling and competitive hard-court tournaments outside the 4 Grand Slams, delivering a jaw-dropping run to the round of 16. She did not merely survive a dense draw, she actively bullied established, highly ranked veterans directly off the baseline to officially break into the global top 50 for the first time. This performance has definitively proven to the entire world that she belongs in the exclusive, elite tier of women's tennis. By demonstrating such dominance on one of the sport's biggest stages, she has transitioned from a promising prospect to a legitimate threat within the professional hierarchy. Her rise is characterized by a relentless power game and a mental fortitude that belies her age, signaling a permanent shift in the WTA landscape. As she moves from the hard courts of Florida to the specialized red clay of Europe, she carries the momentum of an athlete who has already mastered the art of dismantling top-tier opposition under immense pressure. The terrifying reality for the WTA locker room is that North American hard courts are not even Alexandra Eala's final, most dangerous form. By transitioning across the Atlantic to heavy European clay, Eala effectively returns to her absolute athletic sanctuary. Since her early teens, she has meticulously perfected her craft at the legendary Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain. She was quite literally biomechanically engineered on red clay by the most brilliant minds the surface has ever seen. Because of this elite, specialized training under the supervision of Tony Nadal, Eala understands the grueling, punishing arts of clay court tennis fundamentally better than many players a decade her senior. While others struggle to adjust their footwork and timing, she steps onto the dirt with a natural fluency and strategic depth that makes her a lethal threat as the tour moves into this specialized swing. Her preparation in Mallorca has forged a version of her game that weaponizes the unique physics of clay, turning a surface that humbles most into her personal playground for dominance. Playing on clay is not simply about sliding. It is a highly complex physical chess match that requires an entirely different geometric understanding of the court. It requires heavy kicking top spin to actively push your opponents completely out of the television frame. It requires massive cardiovascular endurance to survive 20-shot rallies, and it requires the elite footwork necessary to turn awkward defensive positions into lethal immediate offense. Eala possesses a heavily weaponized left-handed forehand that is specifically designed to completely terrorize opponents on this exact surface. When her forehand generates that sickening amount of RPMs, a direct, undeniable byproduct of that Nadal Academy DNA, and that ball hits the crushed brick of the Lynn center court, it is going to absolutely explode upward, violently jumping off the surface and completely disrupting the strike zone of her opponent. For Isa to come off a career-best confidence-building hard-court swing and immediately step onto her absolute preferred surface armed with a top 50 ranking and the swagger of a proven winner is an absolute, unmitigated disaster for anyone standing on the opposite side of the net. The entire tennis world is watching closely to see if her hard-court success will immediately translate to the dirt, and the underlying analytics suggest that her game is about to become exponentially more dangerous. But standing directly in her way, heavily determined to protect her home turf, is Julia Grabher. And we absolutely have to respect the deeply complex, highly volatile psychological dynamic she brings to this specific first-round matchup. Grabher is absolutely no pushover. She is a 29-year-old battle-tested seasoned veteran of the WTA Tour. She intimately knows the grueling, highly unforgiving reality of professional tennis, having aggressively clawed her way to a career-high ranking of number 54 in the world back in 2023. More importantly, she is an Austrian national. She is playing in her absolute literal backyard. The tournament organizers purposely built this massive temporary 3,000-seat center court in the absolute middle of Linde to pack the stands with screaming, passionate, highly partisan local fans who are going to desperately try to will their hometown hero to a massive tournament defining upset. In professional tennis, playing against the home favorite in a confined indoor arena is a deeply suffocating, claustrophobic, and entirely hostile experience. Every single unforced error you make is immediately met with deafening mocking applause. Every single winner the opponent hits is treated like a monumental championship point. The crowd actively attempts to insert themselves into the match, completely disrupting the rhythm of the visiting player. It is a highly toxic, entirely unforgiving environment that is specifically deliberately designed to mentally break young, inexperienced players and force them into a state of absolute athletic panic. Grabher is going to rely incredibly heavily on that massive emotional tidal wave. She is a gritty, defensive-minded classic clay court specialist who knows exactly how to suffer on the dirt. She knows with absolute certainty that she cannot overpower Alexandra Ella in a pure baseline heavy-hitting firefight. So her entire tactical game plan will revolve around extending the rallies, throwing in incredibly frustrating high-looping junk balls, absorbing pace, and aggressively hoping that the deafening Austrian crowd can successfully rattle the young Filipina star into making completely uncharacteristic mistakes. However, the absolute cold-blooded, mathematically undeniable reality of modern professional tennis is that raw, unadulterated talent and elite biomechanical execution will always eventually silence a hostile crowd. And this is exactly where we predict the unprecedented, highly systematic, and utterly ruthless dismantling of Julia Grabher will ultimately take place. When you break down the pure tactical matchup on the chalkboard, Grabher's absolute greatest strength is her ability to stubbornly grind out points and force her opponent to hit an extra ball. But she is about to face a player who possesses a completely different, overwhelmingly superior caliber of baseline artillery. Alex Eala does not just hit the tennis ball. She violently punishes it with malicious intent. On a traditional clay court, you cannot simply block Aya's heavy left-handed ground strokes back into the center of the court and expect to survive the rally. Because of the aggressive top spin, Grabher will be consistently physically pinned 3 to 4 meters entirely behind the baseline, desperately running side to side just to stay alive in the point. This is a fatal, completely unrecoverable biomechanical disadvantage. When you are forced to play that deep in the court, you surrender all of the offensive geometry. And the exact moment Grabher inevitably drops a ball short inside the service line, Eala is going to aggressively step inside the baseline and completely execute her with ruthless, laser-accurate, flat winners down the line. It is absolutely not going to be a competitive, drawn-out grind. It is going to be a highly calculated, deeply clinical athletic execution. The Austrian crowd might start the match incredibly loud, incredibly energetic, and completely hostile. But we are boldly predicting that within the first 5 or 6 games of the opening set, Eala's sheer suffocating baseline dominance is going to completely and entirely suck the oxygen out of that building. The silence in that 30,000-seat arena will be absolutely deafening once the local fans collectively realize that their hometown hero is being entirely outclassed, out-hit, and outmaneuvered by a vastly superior generational talent who operates on a completely different athletic frequency. This impending, highly anticipated victory is not just about advancing to the round of 16. It is about sending a massive, undeniable, and deeply intimidating warning shot to the entire WTA establishment. Alex Eala is currently seeded 6th in this highly competitive, absolutely loaded 28-player draw. She is no longer the underdog. She is no longer the cute feel-good story of a rising teenager simply happy to be in the main draw. She is an absolute, undeniable top-tier threat to win the entire tournament and hoist the trophy. And the stakes for this specific first-round match against Grabher are incredibly terrifyingly high, because waiting patiently in the absolute shadows of the second round is none other than the wildly unpredictable, fiercely explosive former French Open champion, Jelena Ostapenko. You simply do not get the privilege to play a Grand Slam champion of Ostapenko's caliber unless you can ruthlessly and efficiently dispose of veteran players like Grabher first. Eala knows exactly what is on the line. She knows that a deep, highly successful run on the European clay right now, immediately following her massive breakout success in the United States, will completely cement her status permanently inside the upper echelon of the global rankings. It will prove that she is an all-surface threat capable of aggressively dominating anywhere on the planet. She is absolutely not going to allow a 29-year-old veteran and a loud partisan Austrian crowd to derail her massive destiny. She is going to step onto that temporary clay court in the design center of Lindt. She is going to completely ignore the outside noise. She is going to trust her elite Spanish training, and she is going to deliver a clinical, aggressive, and incredibly violent masterclass in modern clay court tennis. We are officially confidently calling it right now, and we are not backing down. We are predicting a straight sets highly dominant, entirely unprecedented, and beautifully brutal victory for Alexandra Eala. She is going to aggressively dictate the terms of engagement from the absolute very first point of the match. She is going to completely neutralize the Austrian crowd by physically removing their player from the baseline. And she is going to confidently march into a blockbuster must-watch heavyweight showdown with Jelena Ostapenko. The era of patiently waiting for Eala's potential to mature is officially permanently over. The era of her absolute, unyielding, undeniable execution has officially arrived. And Julia Grabher simply has the severe unfortunate misfortune of being the very first casualty of the 2026 clay court swing. I want to pass this massive, highly analytical and deeply tactical debate directly over to you, the absolute smartest and most passionate fans in the entire global tennis community. Do you truly believe that Julia Grabher's massive, undeniably hostile home court advantage in Austria will actually be enough to mentally derail and rattle the young Filipina superstar? Or is Alex Eala about to deliver the exact kind of ruthless dominant baseline masterclass we are predicting today? And if Eala does successfully advance past the Austrian veteran, do you think she actually has the raw, unadulterated firepower and the tactical maturity to go toe-to-toe with a former Grand Slam champion like Jelena Ostapenko in the very next round? I want to see your deepest, most unfiltered and fiercest tactical predictions in the comments section below right now. Make sure to absolutely smash that like button to push this crucial eye-opening breakdown through the algorithm. Subscribe to Court Pro and turn on those bell notifications so you never miss our explosive deep dives into the real, unfiltered business of the WTA Tour. The European clay season has officially begun. The political and athletic stakes have absolutely never been higher, and we will be right here to document every single massive winner. Catch you in the next video.